Loren Baker, founder of Search Engine Journal, and thank you for joining us today on today's SEJ Show. With me today, I have a special guest, Miranda Miller, the managing editor of Search Engine Journal. Hey, Miranda, how's it going?
Hey, Loren, good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for jumping on. It's such a pleasure to have you and connect, especially in this new year. We're still in, is it too late to say Happy New Year now? It's almost mid-January. Okay, so Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And Happy New Year to everybody. For today's episode, we are going to be discussing some of the most important SEO trends to look forward to in 2022. So SEJ, we just published our SEO Trends 2022 ebook, which is available for download, and we'll drop the link in the recording as well. But it's basically, if you just search for SEO Trends 2022, you're going to find it. And how many folks did we get contributing to this, Miranda?
We had 44 SEO experts contributing this year.
Wow, that's quite a bit. That's 44 divided by 2 is 22.
That is correct.
So, okay. So 44 experts can't be wrong. And we pinged everybody asking them for their opinions, what they thought was going to be important, what they are forecasting for this year, everything else. So we're going to go through some of the, some of the most important talking points of that ebook. And again, afterwards, I highly encourage everybody just to go to the Search Engine Journal site. You'll find, marketing for this ebook all over the place, but we'll drop the link afterwards as well, obviously, and put it in the show notes for today's episode, but definitely download the ebook. But before we get started, I just really wanted to give Miranda, I've known you for years, even before you started at SEJ, but I just wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself, talk about your background, your expertise, and some of the stuff that you really love about SEO.
Sure. So I've been in the SEO space for about 15 years. I've done a ton of ghostwriting for different, through agencies and different brands. I've had a content agency for the last several years. And last year I joined SEJ. I came in-house and I'm loving being part of this SEO writing team.
Awesome. And you are a digital nomad to a degree, correct? Like a practicing.
Yes, I would say
nomad.
Practicing, yes, like aspiring. So maybe 3 months a year pre-COVID, I would travel and work. And now I do that whenever there's a little opening that we can sneak away.
And where are you right now?
Right now I'm in Playa del Carmen. So I'm escaping the Canadian winter. I spend most of my time a few hours north of Toronto, which is fabulous in the summer and really, really awful right now. So I'm down here getting some sunshine, taping the podcast with you and having a lot more fun on my lunch break.
That's great. I've been to Playa del Carmen for a long time, but I do remember there's this bar. There's a couple of them that have swing sets outside the seats.
Oh, nice.
So you can sit on these swing sets. And I guess it's like an Instagram target now. Like everyone wants to take their picture there, but they're really cool. So that's good. And you were in Estonia not too long ago, right?
I was actually. My agency is based out of Estonia. So they have their e-residency program. And so I've been there twice now, getting to know Tallinn, the main city. Yeah. Nice.
And how was that trip?
The last one was frigid. So it was, winter in a Soviet country. In August, it was amazing. I absolutely love Tallinn. It's a cool mix of old architecture and new technology, and they have a really thriving startup scene. So it was a fun place to hang out for a few days.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And then also before we get started, I'd love to give a shout out to our sponsors for today's episode. First of all, InMotion Hosting, which I am wearing this merch right now. So I got my InMotion Hosting shirt on, and SEMrush. So I like to start my days with a cup of coffee, especially my SEMrush cup of coffee, which those of you that are watching the show can see right now as well. But thank you for InMotion Hosting and SEMrush for making the SEJ Show possible, for sponsoring these episodes. And we'll have some more about them later on in the show. But so Miranda, besides like contacting 44 different SEO experts, first of all, how do we find these people?
So we are super fortunate to have a network of over 100 contributing authors. They're experts in technical SEO, content, local SEO, social media, running the whole gamut of digital marketing topics. And we're lucky too that they're a really engaged group. So when we put out these topics and say, we would love to see what you think, you know, what do people need to have on their radar? What can people stop worrying about right now? You know, what was a hot topic last year that you don't need to take into 2022? So that's, most of them are our own authors.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. And I know our writing group, whenever I see you all drop something in there, or when I drop something in there, I just get responses instantly. So it's a great community. It's a great community of contributors. If you're one of the 100 plus, thank you so much again for contributing and making things happen. And so before we get started on what the trends are going to be for 2022, you had mentioned there were some mentions of things that are not going to be a trend for 2022, things that are a little bit outdated. So before we get started on what to expect and what to gear up for, what about with housekeeping, house cleaning, cleaning house? What should people be throwing out going in the next year?
Oh, wow. We saw so many of these in our ranking factors ebook. So, you know, kind of busting some of the misconceptions and myths and things that people still think they might need to measure keyword density, you know, and things like that you can definitely not worry about. In local SEO, we saw the new, I believe is it Bright Local that does that report? The big local ranking factors report came out in November.
So.
And I was surprised actually local citations are kind of falling off as something that people really aren't concerned about anymore. Yeah. So there were some interesting things like that, it's not necessarily that they're not important at all, but just that there are so many more pressing things right now, I think, in SEO. So there were a lot of changes in 2021.
Yeah, I was having some discussions about local with Amanda Jordan last week on the show, and she had mentioned the thing that she had mentioned being one of the most important things to plan for this year is reviews, right? Like she said, that's definitely top of her list. Just really hitting up consumers, customers in the moment to leave it's easy to get a negative review, right? All you got to do is like stick your thumb in the soup while you're serving the table, or drop something, or cuss someone out. But to get a positive review, it actually takes work. So we were going over some tactics last time about reviews, and I'm not that surprised to hear that about citations, because I think a lot of the original drive to build your local citations was to get your NAP data in order, right? Make sure that you have the same phone number everywhere, the same address, so the engines can learn from that and cross-reference that. I think Google, Apple, Bing, they've gotten smart enough to realize, like, once your address is verified, it's verified.
Absolutely.
You think that's
yes. And they have, I think that's what it is. They're getting smarter. They have more trustworthy signals. They understand better which sources can be trusted. So maybe they don't need 400 sources anymore. They only need 12. And so that kind of thing, it's important, of course, that if anyone does see your listing there, you're not giving them the wrong hours or, you know, the wrong phone number. So you do want to catch those inconsistencies. But as a search ranking factor, I don't think it's as important anymore.
Great. So let's start talking about, as opposed to the things that weren't important, let's flip the script, talk about looking forward in 2022. What is one of the main topics that came up as being something incredibly important to look forward to in 2022 that you think we should discuss first?
A lot of SEOs are really excited about IndexNow. And I think that's definitely timely, as we saw a Microsoft announcement come out today, that they'll be sharing data between, or the URLs between the search engines.
Yep.
So that's a massive change that a lot of SEOs are kind of jacked up about.
I'm super excited about IndexNow, and I'll tell you why. It reminds me, first of all, I think we're on the verge of going from predominantly one search engine to many search engines. It just feels that way. And we're at a time of change right now. Like with things like crypto, the metaverse, Web3, I haven't seen this much excitement since the late 90s about something new. And it just feels to me that And I don't understand any of these things because I'm old. But it feels to me that a generation that grew up with the internet is looking like I didn't grow up with the internet. I didn't get online until I was like 20. So generation that grew up with the internet, digital natives, are looking for change. They're looking for something that's different than the status quo. It's not like two big companies running everything or three. Like when I was a kid, it was Microsoft and Radio Shack running everything. Now it's Google and Facebook, right? To a degree, like all of your online experience. So it's really interesting. We've talked to Neva. Every time we publish a post on DuckDuckGo on SEJ, like our traffic just goes through the roof about it. Like we should probably just do like a daily DuckDuckGo update. and there's other search engines like Yes and things like that that are launching. Brave browser search engine. And it just feels like everyone's getting ready. And that's the thing that excites me about IndexNow, is because the ability to ping more than one search engine whenever you make a change to your site, to your page, you add something new, you subtract a page, it's pretty significant. And when I was talking to Fabrice Canal the other day about this, who's basically the architect of the IndexNow protocol, there's a couple of things that he brought up that really were eye-opening to me. One is that Google was not just experimenting with IndexNow, but they were pretty involved with it from day one. Giving feedback, this and that, right? Two is that IndexNow, a lot of when I see conversations in forums or Facebook groups about IndexNow, I see a lot of replies. Oh, this is just Bing. Oh, it's just an alternative search engine. No, it's not. It's a protocol that's built by the folks that were at Bing and by people from other search engines to be able to take the dependence from crawling away and get that information instantly. And that's what excites me about it. It feels like everything's finally catching up on that end. Like crawling websites, all the stuff with like, crawl budgets and indexing and this and that, it's been around for a long time. But the ability just to communicate on the fly, you launch something new, boom, boom, boom. It's pretty amazing. That's what excites me about it. And I feel like all of these new engines launching and all of these new alternatives coming about, that if there's a way as a site owner that I can alert all of them at once that I've made a change to my site, first of all, it's incredibly efficient. But secondly, it reminds me of the late 90s when we had like Lycos and Hotbot and Alta Vista and Excite and all of that as well. So I'm getting a little bit nostalgia here. But yeah, that's what really excites me about it. Anything on your end? Like, what do you think of when you think of IndexNow?
I think it makes a lot of sense for all the search engines to be backing this. It's a dramatically improved user experience. People want the right information in real time. And so if the search engines have an opportunity to support you getting that correct information, that updated information out even faster, that serves their goals as well. They want to give the best and most accurate answer. And so I think it's almost kind of overdue. Like, it's great that this is happening now, because this is how you get that information in front of people in real time.
Yeah, I think it is long overdue. Feels like things are catching up. And then also, what I also like about it is it's international, right? So it's Bing and Yandex. And I mention this every single episode whenever I talk about Bing, but let's not forget that DuckDuckGo utilizes Bing Webmaster Tools to identify URLs and new sites. So whatever you do in Bing with IndexNow is going to help you with DuckDuckGo and other engines as well. Yandex is huge, and it's also my understanding there's multiple other international search technologies that are going to get in on this. So definitely just go to indexnow.org, I believe is the page of the protocol. There's more information. It's a really easy setup. They put out a WordPress plugin last week, and I think from what I hear, the word on the street is that more and more of these platforms that people utilize for publishing and or e-commerce are going to be using IndexNow by default. So Really happy to hear
great.
that. Cloudflare does already. You can just toggle it on and off. So really super on that end.
We also have a new article today that I want to call attention to.
Oh, yeah.
If someone's looking for a way to automate your IndexNow bulk uploads, one of our new authors has just put a complete step-by-step guide together on how to automate IndexNow submissions with Python.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right. So besides IndexNow and Python, Python was a big trend 2020, 2021, 2022 on SEJ too. What was another trend that really came up in this book and identified by our authors?
So EAT and content quality are still huge. It's like the code that no one really knows how to crack, right? And there are debates happening around like how important is it really in this industry versus that industry? And how do you actually incorporate these qualities into your writing? We have a lot of great resources on our site about this. And, I think it's going to continue to be a hot topic. There's a lot of people who maybe come from a marketing background or, they didn't come up through journalism, but they're having to learn journalistic standards now. And, how can we interview people and make sure that we are properly citing our sources and that Google and readers can tell that this is authoritative content and that, the person who authored it is an expert in the topic. So I see that continuing through 2022.
Do you remember a social network for bloggers called My Blog Log by any chance?
No, I was not on that one.
So My Blog Log was a thing that you could add on your sidebar that would show the bloggers that contribute to your site and link over to their author pages. And then also, I think if you visited a site and you were logged in, it would show you as being a visitor to that site as well. And it was really interesting. I mean, I'm going back in time here to like the mid 2000s, but it was really interesting because it gave instant social proof to whatever publication you were looking at or reading. You could also see like who looked at it, right? I think didn't MySpace do that at one time? LinkedIn does it now, but anyway, so you could also see like who read it, which was cool. Like if I saw, oh, Miranda Miller read this, awesome, or so and so read this, awesome, right? But that's when that just came to my head because part of EAT is the social proof, like it is like proof, and to me, EAT is not just an SEO thing, right? It's a user, it's a trust. It is social proof. It is trust and proof at the end of the day that the content that someone is reading is trustworthy. It's reviewed, it's fact-checked, it's everything else. I mean, we're at a time right now where there's information coming from every direction. And I think one thing that Google has done over the past couple of years, which has been fantastic with their updates, especially your Money, Your Life or your health-oriented updates, is making sure that the information that people are reading is coming from a credible source. Because I think right now, first of all, there's new credible sources, right? It's not just like old media companies that are credible sources, but there's new credible sources, and there's a lot of misinformation out there, whether it's on purpose or not, right? So the fact that EAT is also beneficial to the user at the end of the day, and probably beneficial for the blog or the website or the e-commerce site to make a sale. It seems to me that it's a very, very just easy internal sell. Hey, we should have an advisory board to review this. Hey, this blog post should not just be written by the brand. Well, what happens if that person leaves the company? They leave the company, but at least you know that you have an expert that's writing about this at the time on the site. And the people that go to the site, they don't care if that person worked at the company a year ago or where they are now. They're an expert, and their expertise is going to follow them wherever they go, which is going to benefit you at the end of the day. Do you see EAT as being an extension of the original like Google Authorship Program, or any kind of parallels?
I think authorship is really important. I believe the authorship program was really tied into Google Plus, and having that it was like a quagmire of, it might not have gone away if it wasn't part of that program. But also at the same time, Google has gotten so much better at recognizing entities and knowing, who has written what and that kind of thing. So I think authorship is definitely important. You need to take advantage of your author page. Make sure it's well optimized. People want to know who is creating this content that they're consuming. And like you said, there's so much misinformation. There's so much distrust in all kinds of information consumption. And frankly, there's so much content on the web now that the bar is high. Like average is not good enough anymore. So if you're creating average content, you're going to get average rankings. Someone's doing better than you. So just incorporating EAT practices into your writing process and into your content production, I think is just not only a smart move, but it's the only move. You have to be doing that now.
Also, like while you were saying that, one thing that came to my mind too is that as a publisher, I'm probably a little bit less, I'm a little bit more hesitant to link to something that's generic, that doesn't have a person behind it, right? Because you're thinking about your readers at the end of the day. So if I'm using this as a citation, right? Hey, I'm writing this post about EAT on SEJ. Let me link over to this other thing about authorship. Oh, who's this written by? The name of the agency that did it? No, it's not gonna fly. Are the readers gonna trust that? Let me find something or someone that's a good example to do so. And then I feel more comfortable linking to that in the future for a couple of reasons. One, my readers trust it more. I want them to trust me, right? If I'm linking out to trustworthy sources, readers are going to trust us more, me more, the world, we more, etc. And then two, the content's probably going to, I think as SEOs, we do a lot of like external broken link cleanup, especially at SEJ, right? 18 years worth of content. So there's broken links popping up all the time. If I'm linking to something that I know that someone spent a lot of time on, they're putting their name behind, they've done research, that content's probably going to stick around a little bit longer, right? So that's another intangible there, is that the more you invest in EAT, you may be lowering the barrier of being able to attract natural links because people see you as being trustworthy. They're more open to linking to you and sharing your information with their readership, or maybe even their social audience and their networks that help you at the end of the day as well.
Absolutely.
So, super cool. And then I also know that colleges love it when they see that, when they see that someone that's an alumni of their college has written a piece and it says in the piece that it's an alumni. Sometimes I'll see little things like that pop up on LinkedIn. Like so-and-so is alumni at the same school that you went to, contributed this. I'm like, wow, how did LinkedIn figure that out? Right. So there's little things like that on that end too. As well, intangibles behind EAT. So super cool. Okay, and content quality. So you kind of group the two of those together. Do they go hand in hand, EAT and content quality, or can you have content quality without EAT?
Oh, that's such a good question. And that's what comes up is people are like, well, can it still be quality if I haven't incorporated that, if I'm, in this industry or that? Mm-hmm. And I think it's definitely part of what creates quality content. It doesn't hurt to pay attention to an extra set of best practices. It can only benefit you. It's never going to hurt you to take an extra step and make sure that your content is more trustworthy.
That's true. It's true. I like that. So it's an added layer of content quality at the end of the day.
I think so.
Awesome. So I see next up on the list, this one really scares me, and maybe it shouldn't, but it makes me think that I'm going to lose my job. Automation in SEO. What is automation in SEO? Where does it fall into things? Does it mean that human SEOs no longer have a job because they're replaced by an AI or a robot or something like that?
No.
Or does it make our jobs better?
I think it makes our jobs better, and the humans who get along with the robots and learn how to use them to their advantage are well positioned to be leaders in SEO over the next 5 or 10 years.
Because I've watched all of the Terminator movies, and that never happens.
I might actually be a robot. You'd never know. But I think, anything that can take the mundane sort of repetitive tasks off our plates and give us more time to be creative and to be thinking, more strategically about the customer journey. That's definitely a plus. I have toyed around with some things that scare me a little, like AI writers, especially I make my living in writing, and it's like, are they actually going to tell us stories? Is that possible? And so we do see them writing some news stories and writing product descriptions and things like that. And part of me thinks like, maybe that's not so good. But then if the content comes out okay, is there something else that person who would have been doing that could be working on? Probably. So if it saves time, it results in a better product. I really love AI assisted research assistants. So, something that I would have used 4 or 5 different tools to go out and check keyword volume, look at what the SERPs are like, see what kind of questions people are asking, and to have all of that in one dashboard, like a Surfer SEO or InLinks or Phrase or something like that. On the content side, I'm loving that we can automate some of that research process. And then we have a ton of articles, probably I'm going to say 4 or 5 articles a month that come in from our expert contributors are on how to automate different processes. Sometimes with Python scripts, sometimes with existing tools, but just freeing up time for you to do the higher impact activities in your SEO plan.
And it is a service oriented industry, right? Which is always a struggle. Like, how do you scale a service that's technology, but also very personal at the end of the day too? Because you do need time to utilize brain power for high-end strategy, but you're saying that I probably shouldn't be staying up at night writing like product descriptions to make sure they're differentiated at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Or like meta descriptions too.
And so much analysis that happens with the massive amount of data that we have now, so much of that can be automated. And it just makes sense to do it that way. And you end up with a better product and better insights anyway, because there's only so much we can do with our human brains and our Excel sheets and our calculators.
So what are some other practical examples of utilizing AI? I think you mentioned a couple of companies or tools that can be utilized. So I've heard of using AI as a way to like set up a content brief, or to scale content briefs. So any practical examples or tools that you would recommend on that end?
Those would be like your Phrase or InLinks. And what I love about those is you've got all the tabs, that are doing the various AI assisted things for you, and just clicking on the things you like will drop it into the brief. So you just work through the research and you end up with a brief that you can hand off to a writer and be pretty confident that they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing and where they're getting the information from. And it's not based on guesswork. It's based on an actual analysis of the SERP, of the questions people are asking right now. It's real-time information. And I just think it's so much more precise than how we tried to sort of guess for years at like, well, if they, if this is the keyword volume and I have this much information and how many words should I make this? And this, it tells you, out of the top 20, this is the average content length. And so I don't like to say that like content length, it's not a ranking factor or anything like that, but you definitely want to know what you're up against in the direct competition in the SERPs.
That's good to know. Have we used that at SEJ at all in our editorial?
We're just starting to play with it. I'm super excited. 2 different teams want to use it, so we're just working our way into it right now.
So AI. So it's not the scary thing I think it is. It's not like I'm not going to have a job tomorrow because everyone's going to be hiring.
No, not you. And I think if there is anyone who is making their living in something that is a repetitive task, it's time to upgrade your skills, learn to get along with the machines, see how you can use them to your advantage. So to replicate your efforts and, can you do something at volume now that you could only do a little bit of before? Does it add extra value to a service you are already providing? So I think looking at AI enabled tools that way is a lot more useful than being scared.
Cool. So we've gone over IndexNow, EAT and content quality, as well as automation and SEO, right? So what was next on the list? What's number 4?
So this is one that I think you'll have lots to talk about too, because we've had conversations about this, but visual content and images and
Yes.
the need to be more original, I think, across the board. As search engines improve their understanding of visual content, that's another way that we can differentiate ourselves. So in addition to, you know, humans being able to recognize that that's a stock image, you're also maybe missing an opportunity to tell Google something original and unique about that piece of content. So I think that's going to be a big trend this year.
I think so too. And this was the one thing that I had written as one of the 44 that were on here as well, is that, you know, it's really interesting because in the past couple of years, I've noticed that one trend I've definitely noticed is that there's written content, especially expertly written content, has much more value than it did 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I also think that people are starting to recognize their value as well, right? Where it used to be that a writer might be part of, when Business Insider first started, I went to go visit their office in New York. And I walked in, one floor, there had to be 120 writers, right? It felt like, you know, that meme of the pigeons hitting the keyboard.
They're just churning stuff out in there. Yeah.
That's what maybe it wasn't 120, maybe it was 60, but it was a lot of writers. And it just felt very like sweatshop to me.
Yes.
And when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, first of all, it's in New York. So how can they pay all these writers in New York? But secondly, it was like, wow, like I felt a little bit like these people are being taken advantage of. And over the years, I've noticed, and I think we've all noticed, is that a lot of people that used to be within those traditional, not that it's a traditional publication, but it's been around for a long time. So that have been in the world of journalism, publications, just writing and churning out content, starting to really be rewarded for their expertise, not only their expertise in writing, but also for what they know, what they can contribute. And, you know, it's led to, I mean, really a renaissance of sorts in that respect. And of course, Google can figure out now what's very quality content and what's not quality content. And it was 10 years ago with the Panda update where it was like spun content and article content. So that was a decade ago. So if you look at how much technology has grown, right, over the past decade, and think about, well, yeah, Google can tell the difference between what someone writes that's actually a doctor or a physician or went to school at this, and then what someone has written that you just paid them X amount per word to try to rewrite this. And one thing that really hit me too, thinking about that, was also images. So if you go to Google image search and you click on an image and you'll see related images, Google is very good at figuring out what is stock imagery and what is not stock imagery. And the one thing I've noticed is that when you click on related images, you'll see all stock imagery on the right side from different sites. And I've noticed that within image search, year after year after year, there's less and less stock imagery and more original images being served. And then Google Lens comes into the equation. So I was really impressed with Google Lens. I hadn't used it very much, but I used it a couple of days ago because I had noticed that one client that I work with, one of their items is being, like if you search for the item name, it's appearing in Google, and it's like an old label. So I'm like, I wonder how many other sites are selling this outdated merchandise, right? So I utilized Google Lens to take a screen cap of that label, and then it searched for it. It showed me every single site in Google that had that outdated merchandise. And it blew me away. First of all, it saved so much time, right? Because I didn't have to go through and look at everything. But then like suddenly, like I have a list of all of your vendor relationships or partners that are selling stuff that's like an old brand name for all these different types of prices. Like I was able to find everything. It was pretty incredible.
So that can be used for competitive intelligence too.
It could be. It could be 100%. And then another thing too is like if you search Google now for anything that's tutorial based, first of all, you're going to get a ton of YouTube videos, right? But then underneath that, to the right, well, if you search Google now for anything on mobile and sometimes even on desktop, you get an image to the right of the search results as well. So images are also becoming more important. So if you're going to use an image that everyone knows is out there, I mean, the stock image, what is it? The guy who's walking and he's turning around looking at the other girl, right? And it's like, you always see that in memes. But if you're going to use a stock image with like one of those actors, it's on every single, it's not just about the stock image that you're using, but it's about the actor. So if Google can pick up this label, they can pick up every single image that actor's ever been in, that face has ever been in, that's set up similarly pretty easily, right? And one thing I've noticed with a couple of clients that I work with is that we stopped doing that and we started bringing in photographers and paying photographers to do unique, original lifestyle shots that support either the product, the service, or the content, like tutorial content, like makeup tutorials and stuff like that, that we're producing on the client side. And what happened? The results where we switched out the stock imagery with the original imagery skyrocketed. Like it really made a difference at the end of the day from a rankings perspective. And then the tutorials that were original that we were writing, starting with the new imagery, ranked faster than the tutorials that we had written previously, just utilizing stock imagery or things that we have found with, a stock imagery site. So I think that there's a transition happening within Google that's just part of just a series or a sequence that's happened over time, is that the more Google can eliminate repetition, right, over and over again, the better. And it just makes for a better, user experience at the end of the day. It's like the Matrix. Remember the first Matrix and like in the White Rabbit version of it, it would stop and it would show you like how in the movie they were trying to replicate how programmers work by copying and pasting everyone. So you'd see like the city view, and you'd notice that there were like 8 different groups of people that were exactly the same, right? But you don't notice it the first time you watch it, right? So it kind of the whole concept kind of reminds me of that. I'm rambling, but what are your thoughts on the
No, that's totally okay.
Visual content.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, we've seen this shift in traditional media. Even they're trying to use more original photos. So like my hometown newspaper, all of the writers and reporters now are responsible for their own photography.
Really?
They don't just want to use whatever was syndicated from national. And, even myself, and I know a lot of my peers have upgraded our skills in design and photography.
Yep.
So like I wanted to learn Illustrator so we could make basic edits to images and stuff. But it's part of that whole page experience, the whole experience someone's going to have with your content, and that is their impression of your brand. And so you can just slap a generic thing up there so you have some color on the page, or you could use that visual to be a continuation of the story. And that's, I think, a far better use, and Google recognizes that. So I think you're right, they'll continue rewarding that content. And it also makes you discoverable in other types of searches.
And it just occurred to me, and I don't want to be like too buzzwordy or whatever, but the concept of NFTs and the ability to have a digital certification that is the original piece of content, right? That is the original licensed, owned image is pretty amazing. And if you think about it, it could, from a markup perspective, it could be really easy to just tell Google at the end of the day, this is the one image that you should be indexing, and that's it. And you shouldn't index anybody else's version of this image because they don't have the rights to it.
Right.
Which is totally different than the way the image search has worked to date. So that's something to look out for. And NFTs confirming uniqueness in imagery within Google. and to your point earlier, and I'm glad I have accessories. I have props. I'm like Carrot Head. The
nice.
Carrot Head of SEO. So everybody has one of these. And for those of you that are listening, I'm holding up a Canon Rebel. Like not everybody has a camera, right? Not everybody's walking around with a camera, but almost everyone has a phone, right?
Yes.
Which is really a camera with a phone hooked into it. So the amount of original, you don't have to hire photographers anymore to put together original photography. I mean, we're producing a video right now and streaming it everywhere and getting thousands of views with very low resource put into this. So it's just, it makes sense to me, even if, and I think as site owners and publishers at the end of the day, if you're doing something original, it's just going to be more interesting. And it goes back to the whole EAT thing. It's more interesting. It's more authentic. It represents the brand more. People are going to share it. People are going to link to it. They're going to ask you if they can share it because they're afraid that they don't want to use your copyrighted NFT photo and break any rules. So hopefully those days of getting judgment letters from Getty are over, because everyone will be not using stock imagery or what they found within image results and just producing their own images.
We can only hope.
All right. We can only hope. Okay, the last one on the list: search intent and mum.
And mum, which
Search
I have more
intent and
questions about than answers. But yes, I'm excited to see what mum will bring us this year.
And what about search intent in general?
I think it's getting a lot more airplay now, and that's a very good thing. So marketers are putting a lot more thought into who am I trying to reach and what do they need from me, as opposed to what do I want to say and who can I get it in front of. So just, we've kind of flipped that on its head, and people are paying a lot more attention now to the why they're doing it and who it's for. And you know, as we have more and more and more content on the web, that's what it's going to take. You need to be able to show Google that you are directly relevant to that person's query in every way, shape, and form. So you need to have a solid understanding of what it is that you're trying to appeal to. What emotion is it? What need is it? What is the pain point that you are there to solve? And without knowing that, you're really just shouting into the wind. So it's super important.
And I also think that, you know, first of all, I've had people bring up intent recently. So I think there's a lot more education going on out there. Even the tool sets like SEMrush, our sponsor, SEMrush. When you search for queries on SEMrush, it will tell you what the intent is, right? Informational, transactional, or navigational, I think are their three labels. And I do believe that there is a negative association in some circles with SEO because of the amount of stuff that was forced into the results previously. Like someone's searching for one thing and they see something else, right? And Google's done a very good job of making sure that what's actually in the results is what people are looking for. And then also, I think as SEOs, we tend to get frustrated if we used to rank at the top above the fold. Say if you rank in the top 3, top 4, it used to be above the fold, lots of clicks. But then now there's videos. Now there's people also ask. Now there's rich snippets. Now there's all kinds of inserts that Google seems to be testing a new one every weekend. And I believe that's what people are looking for when they're searching. So Google can formulate what people would like to find as well, like by just putting things like videos or rich snippets. But I also think people are trained and people are looking for things that it's not just a content and what someone's writing intent, but this goes back to visual a little bit. It's the way people are communicating that content, the platform, and how they're utilizing it. So is it only written, or is it only audio, or is it only video? And I think you really have to do all of the above at the end of the day, because of the intent of the individual is not just the type of content they're looking for, but how they're looking to process it. Even to the extent where LinkedIn announced today that they're launching something similar to Clubhouse, right? And I think Clubhouse has kind of gone away, and I could be wrong here, but the one thing that's happened is that there's a lot of transition into the live audio community. So enough of my thoughts on intent. What are your additional thoughts on intent?
On intent, okay, we're not going to talk Clubhouse because I spent about 5 minutes there, and it was
I had
not
to go.
For me.
I know people that do the get rich quick programs, or I've worked with them in the past, and now they're life coaches and stuff like that. I just had enough. I had to get that. I had to get out of there. Delete app. immediately. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
But yes,
So
yeah,
what do you
different content formats and like understanding, like you said, the way someone would prefer to consume that information. It's so important, and that speaks to intent too. It's not just the, what is it that they need in that moment. It's also, where are they? What kind of device are they using? Would this make sense as a podcast? Would it make sense to do a short video about it? If you do a video, do you have a transcript so everyone can enjoy that? So yeah, I think that's why it's so important to actually, I love tools, but also just go out to the SERPs and see what's appearing. What are you up against? Who is putting out an innovative content format that you could maybe outrank? So doing your homework and making sure you understand you're not just competing against the written content of your own business competitors. You might be competing against publishers, news media, social networks. So go out there and see what you're up against.
You might be competing as yourself.
Yes.
Right. And then, like, in addition to like the phone and videos and Instagram and photos and stuff like that, the one thing in audio, like the other thing too, is like, I thought we were ahead of the curve because we use Loom so much in SEJ now. Right. And I've been on client calls trying to act all smart.
Loom.
I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you can really like be more efficient. We can put this together as a Loom tutorial. Have you ever heard of Loom? They're like, oh, we use that already. Like, it seems like everyone is using Loom suddenly, right? All over the place. That's a lot of content out there. I don't know if you can make that content public or not with Loom, but it seems to me that that network or that solution is going to have a lot of data and a lot of tutorials very, very quickly, essentially being crowdsourced by people that are utilizing it. And is that going to be indexed in Google at the end of the day? How findable is that? How does that compete against LinkedIn? How does that compete against all of the different Khan Academy and everything else out there as well? All of these different like walkthroughs and snapshots. And how does that compete against YouTube? So kind of have that in the back of my head. And of course, there's going to be a million copycats that are going to come out, right? So like suddenly everyone's putting together tutorials to scale with, like, getting back to the whole like, automation thing. Like, am I going to tell this to every new employee that comes in and spend 30 minutes walking through? Or can I just, they're working from home anyway, send them a video. I can see they watched the video. Good to go. They should know everything from there. And then I can send them a Kahoots quiz at the end of the day to make sure that they actually watched everything and they learned everything. So yeah. Again, a little bit off topic, but on topic. Yeah, it is. It is. Cause I think that we're at a point now where I think we're past only consumer driven, personal driven user generated content. And we're getting to the point where there's professional user generated content and scale, and getting that out there. And then Google trying to figure all this out at once, right? Because you have video sitemaps, you have image sitemaps, you have paid post sitemaps, you have everything else. You have all this information, right? That's coming. You have schema markup around it. You have IndexNow. So they're trying to figure out all of this at once. And it's a lot of, if you think about it, there's not a finite number of written content, but there's only a certain amount. But the amount of video, audio, visual content that can hit very quickly, especially with everybody snapping and filtering and doing everything, escalates substantially over time, right?
Well, and this is what I'm kind of curious about with Mom is, if Google's looking at at different ways to solve, more efficient ways to solve more complex queries, you could bring a lot of different content types into answering one single query. And you want to make sure that you're there, right? So like the time to be experimenting with these content formats is right now. I can't wait to see how that all shakes out. I'm sure it'll be developing over the next few years, but I think we'll see the SERP changing quite a bit as Mom is implemented more and more.
I agree. So, all right, we're pretty much at the 50-minute mark right now, Miranda. I can't believe this has gone by so quickly.
Well, thank you. I had a great time going over the SEO trends for this year, and I hope that was helpful.
Is there anything else that people should really keep an eye out on besides the trends that appeared in this ebook? Is there anything that's top of mind for you that you think folks should definitely keep an eye on or look out for?
Outside of what's in the book, I really can't think of anything. I'm hoping that we dispel some more ranking factors myths this year. I think just making sure that people are getting the most accurate information in their SEO education is super important. So make sure that the information you're relying on to formulate your own strategy is credible. It changes quickly. Make sure you're not going off something that happened 5 years ago. And I think we're only going to see that pace of change speed up this year. So keep your ongoing learning sharp.
I think so too. The one thing I always tell people about SEO is you got to be on top of trends. You got to be on top of things that are new. You just have to. You have to stay ahead of the curve. So it's getting to be more and more. It makes me happy. It keeps me. That's what I wake up for in the morning. Right? Wake up, check SEJ, check tech meme, check everything that's happening. Check Twitter, see what's going on. So it's always good. Miranda, where can people find you online?
They can find me at SEJ. I'm also on Twitter at Miranda LM Writes and at SEJ all the time.
Awesome. Well, it's been a real pleasure connecting. Thank you for taking time out of your day in Playa del Carmen to join for this podcast. What's the weather like right there?
Oh, it's glorious. It's all blue skies. I'm going to go enjoy it after this.
You do some snorkeling?
Maybe on the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I love that area. Well, again, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who's been watching today on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Really enjoyed today's discussion. We'll be following up with a recap. And then also, of course, next week, the audio version of the podcast will be made available utilizing Apple Podcast, Google Play, and then where else can Spotify? People can find us on Spotify. You can find us anywhere. So just search for SEJ Show, SEO Podcast, Search Engine Journal Show, whatever. But whatever you're doing, wherever you're listening, make sure that you take the time, please, to rate us, give us a thumbs up, give us 5 stars. Whatever you're going to do, ring the bell, yada, yada, yada. Just let people know how great the show is, share it, and everything else. And that's it. So thank you again, Miranda. Thank you again for our audience for listening and joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Loren.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Search Engine Journal Show. If you liked this episode, subscribe to our channel for so much more and click the notification bell so you don't miss a thing.